Welcome to John Carter Stories. I want to tell you something before I begin. I am 67 years old. I have worked construction my entire life. I have poured concrete in the rain, framed houses in summer heat that made the air shimmer, and swung hammers in temperatures that cracked the skin on my knuckles. I have done all of that without complaint, because that is what you do when you love your family. You work, you save, you build something that lasts. I never imagined that the hardest thing I would ever do would not involve a single tool. It would involve a boardroom, a folder of documents, and a decision to pour 42 years of everything I had ever saved into a single act of love, so large it still makes my chest tight when I think about it. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to a Tuesday morning in March when I was standing at my kitchen stove at 6 in the morning, frying bacon in a cast iron pan I have owned since before my son was born. His name is Nathan. He was leaving for his first day at his father-in-law's company, and I was making him the good bacon, thick cut from the butcher 2 streets over. Because today mattered. Today was the beginning of something. I could feel it the way you feel weather coming in before the clouds arrive. Something was shifting, and I did not yet know which direction it was going to go. My house is a modest 3-bedroom ranch in northeast Portland. I bought it in 1996 and paid it off in 15 years. The kitchen has chipped countertops and cabinets I installed myself, and a linoleum floor that has seen better decades. But it is mine. Every nail in every wall went in with my own hands. On the mantel in the living room, visible from the stove, if I turned my head, sat a photograph of my wife, Margaret, Nathan's mother, gone 20 years now. Some mornings I still turn to say something to her before remembering. That morning felt like one of those mornings. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled, because what I am about to share with you changed my life in ways I am still processing, and I need the right people to hear it. Nathan came downstairs at 6:30 wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than I used to earn in a week, tailored perfectly, a gift from his wife, Diana. His tie was silk. His shoes were polished to a mirror finish. My son looked like he belonged in a boardroom. He looked nothing like the boy who used to sit in that same kitchen, doing homework at this same table. "Morning, Dad." "Morning. Sit down and eat." He sat in his usual chair, the same chair he had sat in since he was 8 years old, and he fidgeted with his tie in a way he always did when he was nervous. I had seen that fidgeting on his first day of school, before his college interviews, on his wedding day. Diana says her father is genuinely excited to have me on the team. Nathan said, "Real opportunity to learn the business from the inside." I slid eggs and bacon onto a plate and set it in front of him. "Working for family can be complicated," I said carefully. He looked up. "What do you mean?" "It means you might have to work twice as hard. Prove you earn it on your own merit, not just because you married the boss's daughter." "I know that, Dad. I am ready for it." But I saw the doubt flicker behind his eyes like a candle in a draft. Nathan had always been brilliant, MBA with honors, top of his class. But he carried something inside him, this quiet uncertainty, this waiting for someone to confirm what he feared, that he did not quite belong wherever he found himself. "You earned this position," I told him firmly. "Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Family or not." He nodded and returned to his breakfast. "Your mother would have been so proud," I said quietly. "Seeing you in that suit, starting something new." His throat worked. He did not speak for a moment. "I wish he could have been at the wedding," he said finally. "At all of it. She was—" I told him. "She is." I tapped my chest. "Right here. She sees everything." We ate in the kind of comfortable silence that only exists between two people who have been through enough together that words are not always necessary. After Margaret passed cancer, fast and brutal, when Nathan was 12, it had been just the two of us, me working double shifts to keep him in good schools, him studying late into the night, determined to make something of all those sacrifices, determined to prove they had meant something. Now here we were. When he stood to leave, I walked him to the door. He grabbed his briefcase, leather and expensive, a gift from the Calloway family, Diana's people, and turned back. "Thanks, Dad, for everything, for breakfast, for all of it." I gripped his shoulder. That is what fathers do. Now get moving before Richard thinks his new hire shows up late. Nathan grinned. For a moment, the nervousness disappeared completely. Then he was out the door, walking to his car in the driveway. The practical Honda he had insisted on buying himself. Even after marrying into money, that was my boy. I stood on the porch and watched him back out. Early March. Cool enough to see your breath. The neighbor's maple was just starting to bud. Nathan waved as he pulled out, and then he was gone. I should have gone inside. I had work to finish, a bid to complete for a renovation on the east side. Paperwork stacking up, but I could not move. I stood there with my hands in my pockets, staring at the empty street, and that feeling in my chest, the one that had woken me at 5 instead of 6, would not leave. Something was wrong. 42 years of construction had taught me to trust that feeling, the moment before scaffolding shifts, the second before measurement turns out to be off by just enough to matter. There's always a feeling first, a heaviness, your gut saying pay attention. I tried to shake it, went inside, washed the dishes, changed clothes, sat with my laptop and the project. If you're just joining this story, go back to part 1. You need to know where we have been to understand what comes next. The drive to downtown Portland takes 15 minutes on a good day. That morning it felt like it took a year. Traffic was heavier than I expected. I navigated through delivery trucks and Monday morning commuters in my old Ford pickup. The paint faded, a dent in the passenger door from a lumber delivery gone wrong 3 years back. Work truck through and through. The kind of vehicle that looks increasingly out of place the closer you get to the financial district. Calloway Hospitality's headquarters sat on a corner lot in the heart of downtown. 20 stories of reflective glass and polished chrome. The kind of building that announced money in every clean line of its architecture. The kind of place where men like me usually show up through the service entrance with a toolbox. I parked in the visitor garage between a silver Mercedes and a black Lexus and sat for a moment with my hands on the wheel. He is 31 years old, I told myself. He does not need you checking in like he is in grade school. But the feeling would not leave. I got out and walked toward the lobby. The automatic doors open into a space that probably cost more to decorate than my entire house. Marble floors, modern art on the walls, everything cold and expensive and designed to remind you of exactly where you ranked. A young woman at the reception desk with a practiced professional smile looked up. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" "I am looking for my son, Nathan Foster. He started today." Something crossed her face. Not quite pity, maybe warning. Her eyes flicked toward the elevators and back. "Oh, Mr. Foster, let me check on that for you." She reached for the phone, but I was already moving. I should have waited. I did not wait. The elevator to the 3rd floor played soft instrumental music designed to keep you calm. It was not working. The doors open onto the executive suite. Thick carpet, more art, floor to ceiling windows overlooking the city. A hallway stretched ahead with brass nameplates on every door. I followed the signs. And then I heard it. Laughter. Male voices. That specific quality of laughter that happens when someone is the subject of a joke they have not been letting on. Loud and comfortable and deeply unkind. I rounded the corner. One door stood half open. I walked quietly to it and pushed it further. And I stopped. Nathan was on his knees, in the middle of a massive corner office with mahogany furniture and windows overlooking half of Portland. My son, my boy with his MBA and his honors degree and his silk tie, was on his knees on that expensive carpet. Richard Calloway sat in his executive chair, one foot propped up on Nathan's knee. My son held a yellow polishing cloth, working across the leather of Richard's shoes. "You miss a spot right there," Richard said, his voice dripping contempt. "Or are you as blind as you are useless?" 2 men stood near the desk, both in suits that cost more than my truck. One older with gray at his temples. A man I would learn was Richard's personal lawyer, Charles Pemberton. The other younger, Kevin Marsh, a business associate. Both watching, both grinning. "Maybe he needs more practice." Charles said. "Give him a few weeks," Kevin added. "He might work his way up to cleaning the windows." They laughed. Nathan's hands trembled. His face was a deep burning red. The same face that had been bright and nervous and hopeful at my kitchen table just hours ago. Now it was twisted with something that looked like shame, trying very hard to look like nothing. Then he looked up, saw me standing in the doorway, and I watched my son break. His eyes said everything his voice could not. Dad, please, please do not make this worse. Please just go. I am begging you. Every muscle in my body wanted to cross that room. Every year of construction work, every hour of real physical labor, everything in my hands and my arms and my chest wanted to move. 1 step, 2 steps, and Richard Calloway's perfect composure would never be perfect again. But Nathan's eyes held me. That silent, desperate plea. I forced my hands open, forced my breathing to slow. Can I help you? Richard's voice cut across the room. He had not moved, had not bothered to lift his foot from my son's knee. I am Nathan's father. Richard's expression moved through surprise and landed somewhere uglier. Amusement. Ah, Mr. Foster, your son is learning the business from the ground up. He gestured at Nathan with one hand. Quite literally. Charles and Kevin laughed again. Come on, Nathan, Richard continued. Show your father what you have mastered this morning. I looked at my son, at the yellow cloth in his shaking hands, at the way he could not hold my gaze anymore. We will talk later, son, I said. My voice came out calmer than I felt, much calmer. Then I looked at Richard, held his gaze. You and I will talk too, Mr. Calloway. Something in my tone made his smirk shift, just for a second, just a fraction. I turned and walked out, down that hallway, into the elevator, through the marble lobby, through those automatic doors, to my truck. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, and I stared at absolutely nothing. The image stayed with me like something burned behind my eyes. Gregory Holt had been my closest friend for 20 years. He had started as a private investigator handling insurance cases and had built one of the most quietly effective research operations in the Pacific Northwest. He had the face of someone who had seen too much and the patience of someone who had learned to wait for the right moment. He was the only person I trusted completely with what I was about to say. He was already at the Milliner Cafe on the east side when I arrived. Laptop open. Paper spread across the table like a battle plan. Dark circles under his eyes. He had clearly not slept. You look terrible, he said. I did not sleep. He pushed a cup of black coffee across the table. Drink that first. I sat down and took a sip. Burned my tongue. Did not care. Gregory leaned back and looked at me steadily. Richard Calloway is drowning. I set the cup down. How bad? His voice was quiet but precise. $18.5 million bad. I stared at him. He continued without pausing. Calloway Hospitality is underwater. For major projects failed in the last 2 years. A luxury hotel that never opened. A restaurant in Seattle that closed after 6 months. 2 developments that bled money from the first day. Richard has been living like he is at the top of the world while his company collapses beneath him. The mansion is mortgaged to the roof. The cars are leased. He has been juggling creditors for months, and the music is about to stop. How long does he have? Gregory tapped the spreadsheet in front of him. 90 days. Maybe less. When the banks move in, everything gets liquidated. 140 employees lose their jobs. Richard loses a company. The house, the lifestyle. Everything goes. I stare at the red numbers spread across those pages. And Nathan, I said. He put Nathan in that office to what? Look legitimate? By time? That is my read. Gregory's voice was flat. He is using your son as a prop. Brings a new MBA son-in-law on board. Looks like a stable family business. But Richard knows what is coming. He is not building anything. He is performing stability for the banks and partners while he figures out an exit. Gregory slid a spreadsheet toward me. Here is the number that matters. The company is worth $4 to $5 million if you liquidate tomorrow. But if you want controlling interest, enough to actually run it, you need 65% ownership. That costs $11.2 million. Anything less and the whole thing collapses anyway because the debt brings it down. $11.2 million. I sat back, did the arithmetic quietly in my head. The rental properties I had bought during the market crash of 2008. The investment portfolio I had been feeding for 30 years. The retirement account I had built dollar by careful dollar since before Nathan was born. It was all there. Barely. But it was there. Edward. Gregory's voice dropped. Do not. Don't what? Whatever you are thinking. Do not. I pulled out my phone and opened my photos, scrolled to Nathan's graduation picture. That crooked smile. That bright future he was supposed to have. I turned the screen toward Gregory across the table. How much is my son's dignity worth? I asked quietly. Gregory stared at the photo for a long time. Then at me. The cafe noise, the clattering dishes and the morning conversation felt very far away. He rubbed his face with both hands. Everything you've got, apparently, he said. I put the phone away and looked at the spreadsheet. The numbers did not scare me. Then let us get to work, I said. And I wish I could tell you the decision felt simple. That it felt the way things do in films where the hero makes the big choice, and the music swells, and everything looks clean and clear. But it did not feel like that. It felt like standing at the edge of everything I had built and choosing to let it go. Deliberately, completely, for one person, for my son. The calls started that afternoon. First was Sandra, my real estate agent, the woman who had sold me 3 rental properties during the crash, when everyone else was running scared. Sandra, I need to sell. Which one? All 3. Silence. Then, Edward, those properties clear $6,000 a month combined. They are cash cows. I know what they are. How fast can you move them? Days, maybe a week with serious buyers. Do it, whatever the market will bear. Second call was to my broker. Liquidate everything. The whole portfolio. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds. I want cash by Friday. Sir, you have been building this for 30 years. The market is up right now. If you wait even a month, I am not waiting. Sell it. Third call was the hardest. Eugene Davis, senior loan officer at the regional bank downtown. A good man. Steady. I had known him 15 years. Edward, how can I help you? I need to withdraw my retirement fund. All of it. A long pause. That is your entire account. Gregory found a leak on a Monday. His name was Marcus Webb, a business consultant I had hired 3 weeks earlier to evaluate Calloway Hospitality's true financial worth. Came recommended by someone I trusted. Sharp, professional, expensive. He had seen our full strategy, the buyout amount, the shell company structure, the timeline, all of it, and he had sold every detail to Richard Calloway. I tested him with a false timeline on a Monday morning, told him we were moving the acquisition up to following Wednesday. By that afternoon, Brian Connolly, one of the men I had lined up to represent our shell company in the boardroom, called me. Edward, someone at Calloway is talking about an investor moving next week. I thought you should know. Next week. The exact fiction I had fed Marcus that morning. Richard knew everything, which explained Officer Dale Stanton showing up at my door on a Sunday with financial crimes freeze order on my accounts. Timing too precise to be coincidence. Richard had found my consultant, turned him, and used a police contact to block my money. I sat at my kitchen table looking at the freeze order and understood something cold and clarifying. Richard was scared enough to strike first, which meant I was close enough to matter. Marcus confessed to me on a Tuesday morning in a corner cafe. He looked terrible, unshaven, shaking. They found something from my past, he said. Personal. I could not lose my family, my reputation. I told him everything. The buyout price, the timeline, the shell company, everything. I listened without interrupting. Then I stood up, looked down at him, and said, "You have done enough. Do not contact me again." I walked out. In my truck in the parking lot, I sat with my hands on the wheel. Richard had the amount, the strategy, the timeline. My money was partially frozen. My plan was exposed. Nathan was still in that building, still on his knees, still holding the polishing cloth. Gregory's words from earlier that morning came back to me. Edward, maybe it is time to consider stopping. You tried. Cutting your losses is not the same as failing. I had almost agreed. Sitting in that parking lot, I almost picked up the phone and told Gregory it was over. Then I looked at my phone and noticed it. One missed call from earlier that morning. Unknown number. Portland area code. A voicemail. I hit play. A man's voice came through. Calm. Mid-30s. Serious. Mr. Foster, my name is Lucas Cross. I know you're trying to acquire Calloway Hospitality. I know Richard is fighting you. I can help you. I have evidence, things that will end him completely. But I need your help to make them matter. Meet me tonight at Riverside Park, North Bench, 6 o'clock. Come alone. I will wait until 6:30. If you want justice, Mr. Foster, I may be your last chance. The message ended. I played it again. Trap or genuine. Richard's setup or someone who actually had something. I called Gregory. His first reaction was instant. It is a setup. Victor sends someone to gain your trust, get you on record. But what if it is not? Gregory, it could be. One more risk, I said. Edward, one more round. My son said that to me when I was ready to quit. Now I am saying it to myself. Gregory exhaled. I am coming with you. No, the message said come alone. You stay close but out of sight. At 5:45, I drove to Riverside Park. The sun was going down over the Willamette River, painting the water in orange and deep pink. I walked toward the north bench. A man was already there, mid-30s, dark jacket, sitting very still, looking at the water. He heard me approach and stood, and something in his face stopped me completely, because what he said next, the 4 words that came out of his mouth, rearranged every single thing I thought I knew about Richard Calloway and what we were really fighting. Mr. Foster, he said quietly, my name is Lucas Cross. Richard Calloway is my father. We sat on that bench as the river flowed past and the light faded, and Lucas Cross told me a story that had been locked inside him for 36 years. His mother, Angela Cross, had worked as a secretary at Calloway Hospitality. Richard had been newly married. They had an affair. Angela became pregnant. Richard had given her $50,000 and a non-disclosure agreement and told her to disappear. Never contact him. Never tell anyone. She had taken the money, moved across Portland, raised Lucas alone. He always sent $2,000 a month, Lucas said. Hush money. 36 years of payments through a shell company. Keep her quiet. Keep me quiet. His voice was level. The way voices get when they have told a story so many times the edges have worn smooth. I grew up knowing my father did not want me. He continued. My mother worked 3 jobs even with that money. When I asked about him as a child, she would say he is not ready yet. Maybe someday. Someday never came. I looked at this man carefully, watching for the signs that this was performance, that this was Richard's design. I saw none of it. I saw only someone carrying a wound that had been living in him for decades. Why now? I asked, why come to me? Because I have been watching Richard for 20 years. I know what he did to your son. The shoe polishing, the humiliation, the way he uses people until they break. I recognized it because he spent my mother's entire life making her feel like she had no right to exist publicly. He reached into a backpack and pulled out a folder. But I am not here just about that. I am here because my mother is dead. 10 years ago, car accident on Highway 26. Police ruled it mechanical failure. He set the folder on the bench between us. 3 days before she died, she called Richard. I heard the conversation. She said she was tired of hiding. She wanted me to know who my father was. She wanted to stop the payments and go public. His voice stayed even. I could hear what it cost him to keep it that way. Richard told her if she went public, she would regret it. The silence between us filled with the sound of the river. 2 days later, he continued. $20,000 transferred from one of Richard's shell companies to a mechanic named Jackson at a shop on the east side. 1 day after that, my mother's car went in for a routine service. Mr. Jackson signed the work order. The next day, my mother's brakes failed on Highway 26. She did not survive. I stared at him. He opened a folder and showed me page by page what a decade of private investigation looked like. Bank transfers, a mechanic sealed affidavit, photographs of Richard meeting someone in an industrial parking lot, a timeline that connected every piece. I sat on that bench looking at the documentation of a son's grief turned into a decade of methodical, quiet, heartbroken work, and something enormous shifted inside me. This was not. Let's make sure he cannot do this to anyone else, I said. We drove back to my house where Gregory and Nathan were waiting. The look on Nathan's face when Lucas walked in, when the connection was explained, when he understood that there was a man in the room who had been broken by the same person in an entirely different way. That look is something I will carry with me until I cannot carry anything anymore. Nathan looked at Lucas for a long moment. I am sorry about your mother, he said quietly. Nobody deserves that. Something passed between them. Two men, different damage, same source. And the four of us sat down at my kitchen table and did not stop working until the sun came up. Stay right here, because part 5 is where we walk into that boardroom. And what happens in that room is something I have to tell you directly. Drop something in the comments right now. Tell me you are still here. Tell me what you are feeling, because I've been sitting with the story for months, and I still feel the weight of that bench by the river, and that folder, and those photographs. Comment below. I want to read every single one. We slept for 2 hours, maybe 3. By 6 in the morning, all 4 of us were back at the kitchen table with fresh coffee and a plan that had 5 moving parts and no room for error. Gregory drove to the state capitol that morning and filed a formal complaint with Oregon State Police Internal Affairs regarding Officer Stanton. Gambling debts, public records, suspicious timing on the account freeze. A pattern of behavior that could not be explained by coincidence. He called me from the state police office at 9:30. They are opening an investigation, he said. Someone will interview Stanton this afternoon. Nathan spent the morning at my laptop building a comprehensive dossier on Stanton. Court filings, financial records, a visual timeline that made the connection between the account freeze and Richard's interest impossible to miss. He also compiled everything on Marcus Webb. Every detail of the betrayal, documented, organized, ready. By noon, he had sent everything to the state investigators. I spent the morning coordinating. Brian Connolly and the 2 other men representing Pacific Northwest Investment Group confirmed they were ready and could be at Calloway Hospitality by 2 o'clock for an emergency board meeting. Brian had delivered the acquisition offer summary to board members Gerald Chambers, Ruth Alderton, and Robert Finch that morning. Gerald Chambers had called him back within 10 minutes. These allegations are extremely serious, Gerald had said. The board must hear this directly. Emergency session approved. Peter Novak, my attorney, had spent the morning reviewing every document and confirming the approach was clean and legal. Sterling's board has fiduciary duty, Peter said. When credible evidence of criminal conduct by the CEO is presented, they are legally obligated to act. At 12:30, the 4 of us stood in my living room in suits and ties. Nathan had lent me his spare jacket. Mine was too worn for what we were walking into. Lucas organized his evidence into clean professional folders. Gregory reviewed the final assignments one more time. 1:30, we drove to Calloway Hospitality. Nobody talked much. Nathan stared out the window. Lucas sat with his hands folded in his lap, completely still. Gregory drove behind us. We arrived at 1:45 and stood together in the visitor parking lot, looking up at 20 stories of glass and steel, the same building where 9 days ago I had watched my son hold a polishing cloth on his knees. Last time I was here, Nathan said quietly beside me, I left through the back door carrying a box. Today you walk in the front. I told him. Lucas stepped up beside us, and with me, we walked toward those glass doors together, side by side. The boardroom on the 3rd floor was designed to make people feel small. Long mahogany table, high back leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The kind of room where empires get bought and sold and nobody raises their voice. The board was already seated. Gerald Chambers at the head. Ruth Alderton with a legal pad covered in notes. Robert Finch studying the acquisition documents Brian had already circulated. Richard's personal lawyer, Charles Pemberton, seated near the middle. Kevin Marsh, Richard's longtime partner, arms folded, and Eleanor Calloway, Richard's wife, sitting rigid and precise in a cream-colored jacket, her hands folded too tightly in her lap. Richard Calloway held court at the opposite end of the table. Expensive charcoal suit, the complete confidence of a man who had never once lost. Brian, Timothy, and Roger walked in first. professional, unhurried. Gerald looked up over his glasses. Gentlemen, Pacific Northwest Investment Group, thank you for making time on short notice. Please take a seat. Richard glanced at them with the mild interest of someone humoring a formality he expected to dismiss. And then Nathan and I walked through the door. Richard's face went through 3 distinct stages: surprise, anger, forced composure. What is he doing here? He pointed at me like I was something unpleasant. Mr. Foster represents Pacific Northwest Investment Group. Gerald said steadily. They have submitted a formal offer this board is legally required to consider. Richard laughed. Not a chuckle, a full, dismissive, theatrical laugh. This man is a contractor, a builder, and his son. He looked at Nathan, the one who could not even manage basic professional duties in this building. I met Richard's eyes, said absolutely nothing, pulled out the chair beside Brian Mitchell, sat down, calm, unhurried. Nathan sat beside me, back straight, shoulders level. Not the man who had left this building through the back door 9 days ago. Not even close. Let us maintain professional decorum, Gerald said firmly. Mr. Connolly, please present the proposal. Brian stood. Pacific Northwest Investment Group is offering $11.2 million for 65% controlling interest in Calloway Hospitality. Terms are outlined in the documents before you. Board members examined their copies. Ruth Alderton made notes. Robert Finch studied the numbers the way a man studies a life raft when he finally understands he needs one. Richard leaned back. We do not need outside capital. Calloway Hospitality is financially sound. This is a waste of the board's time. Robert Finch set down the proposal. His voice was quiet, but completely steady. Victor, I think this board needs an honest conversation about our actual financial position. The room went still. Robert spoke for the next 3 minutes about $18.5 million of debt for failed projects, payroll delays, banking consortium foreclosure proceedings beginning within 60 days. Richard's face turned red. Those are temporary issues. We have major contracts pending. What contracts, Richard? Ruth Alderton's voice was sharp. I have reviewed every quarterly report for 6 months. I have not seen a single new contract proposal. Richard's jaw tightened. Negotiations are ongoing, confidential at this stage. Gerald held up his hand. The board has a fiduciary responsibility. When a serious acquisition offer is presented, we must give it full consideration. Brian, there was mention of additional materials? Brian stood again. Yes, there is one further matter the board should be made aware of. It concerns conduct that the boardroom door opened. A man walked in slowly, looking around the room, taking in each face, each reaction. Mid-30s, dark jacket, the same deliberate stillness I had seen on the bench by the river the evening before. His gaze found Richard Calloway, and I watched all the blood drain from Richard's face. Gerald Chambers frowned. Sir, this is a closed meeting. My name is Lucas Cross, Lucas said. His voice was completely calm. He kept walking toward the table. He placed his folder on the surface and looked directly at Richard. Richard Calloway is my father. The room erupted. Gasps. Confusion. Chairs scraping. Multiple voices at once. Eleanor's voice cut through. What did he say? Richard stood. This is a scam. I have never seen this man in my life. 36 years ago, Lucas said, still standing, still calm, you had an affair with my mother, Angela Cross. She was your secretary. She became pregnant. You paid her $50,000 and a non-disclosure agreement and told her to disappear forever. He placed documents on the table. DNA test. My mother's birth record listing the father as unknown. 36 years of monthly payments from your shell company to my mother's account. $2,000 a month, every single month, to keep her silent. Board members passed the documents between them. Kevin Marsh looked up. The DNA documentation looks legitimate. It is forged, Richard said. This entire situation is a conspiracy. Lucas's voice stayed steady. I never met Mr. Foster until 48 hours ago, but we share something in common. We both loved people you tried to destroy. Eleanor stood from her chair and backed away from Richard. Her voice was shaking. Do you have a son? A son you never told me about? It was before we married. It was long before. So it is true. Her voice broke. It is actually true. Lucas did not let the room recover. But I am not here only to tell you, I am your son. I am here because 10 years ago my mother died. Her car went off Highway 26. The police said mechanical failure. He placed a second folder on the table. 3 days before she died, she called Richard. I heard that conversation. She said she was tired of hiding. She wanted me to know my father. She wanted to stop the payments and go public. Richard told her she would regret it. He stopped for a moment. 2 days later, $20,000 transferred from a shell company to a mechanic named Jackson. 1 day after that, my mother's car was serviced by Mr. Jackson. The next day, her brakes failed. She did not survive. Ruth Alden's hand went to her mouth. Robert Finch set every document down and looked at Richard with an expression that had no warmth left in it at all. Richard, is this true? This is insane. You cannot prove a single word of this. Bank transfer from your shell company to Jackson. Lucas said quietly. Jackson sealed affidavit stating he was paid to compromise the brake line. Photographs of you meeting Jackson 1 week before my mother died. A timeline connecting every piece. Dorothy, Ruth said. Oh my God. Kevin Marsh stood. Richard, I cannot be part of this. He looked at Gerald. I resigned from the board, effective this moment. Gerald Chambers straightened his glasses. Mr. Calloway, in light of these allegations, I am moving for immediate suspension pending investigation. Seconded, Ruth said. Richard looked around the table. His eyes went from face to face, searching for anything, any ally, any foothold. Charles, he said, do something. Charles Pemberton had his briefcase open and was packing it methodically. I am your attorney, Richard, not your accomplice. I strongly advise you to stop speaking and find criminal defense counsel. This is my company. My family built this company. I stood. Everyone turned. I kept my voice even. The board has a choice. Accept Pacific Northwest Investment Group's offer today. Take on the debt. Keep 140 people employed. Or wait for the bank to foreclose in 60 days and watch it all disappear regardless. Gerald looked at Richard. Do you have a counteroffer? Richard had nothing. For the first time in perhaps his entire life, he had absolutely nothing. Gerald looked at the board, all in favor of accepting the Pacific Northwest offer and transferring 65% ownership. Hands rose around the table. Ruth, Robert, Gerald himself. Motion passes. Gerald extended his hand to me. Mr. Foster, the company is yours. I shook his hand, looked at Richard once more. One final matter. Nathan Foster will serve as Chief Operating Officer, effective immediately. Richard opened his mouth. No words came. Nathan squeezed my hand under the table. We had won. And then came the moment I had not written into any plan. Richard turned, looked around the room, his empire dissolving, his lawyer packing up, his wife backed against the far wall staring at him like a stranger. He looked, finally, at the one person he had always believed would stand beside him, his daughter Diana. Diana had been sitting quietly at the far end of the room throughout all of it. She had not spoken, had not moved. Now he looked at her. Diana, he said. His voice was soft. Everything I did was to build something for you. You understand that. Diana looked at her father for a long moment. Then she looked at Nathan. Then she stood, picked up her bag, and walked out of that boardroom without saying a single word. The silence she left behind was the loudest thing in the room. Tell me in the comments. And if you have dealt with something similar, share your story. You are not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Because I mean every word of that. I want to hear from you. 6 months passed. Richard Calloway lost the company first. Then Eleanor divorced him, taking with her most of what remained. The criminal investigation into Angela Cross's death is ongoing. Lucas's decade of evidence gave prosecutors enough to move forward. Richard's reputation in Portland is gone entirely. His lawyers advise him to stay quiet. For once in his life, he is listening. Officer Stanton was dismissed from the Portland Police Bureau. The Internal Affairs investigation Gregory uncovered a pattern of corruption stretching back years. He is awaiting trial. Marcus Webb left Portland. I heard through Gregory that he relocated and started over under a different name. I feel no triumph in that. Just a quiet disappointment that fear made him choose the way he did. Calloway Hospitality became Foster Hospitality. Nathan runs it. The culture is unrecognizable from what it was. Fair wages, ethical practices, respect in every direction. Henry Mercer, a maintenance worker who had shown Nathan a single act of kindness during those 9 terrible days, sat down with him in the break room and ate lunch when everyone else was avoiding him. Henry is now director of facilities. That is the kind of leadership my son has become. Lucas Cross changed his last name legally to his mother's name. I want to honor her. He told me. Not him. He consults on projects occasionally. He seems lighter. Not healed. You cannot fully heal for what he carries, but lighter. And Nathan is building something real. Something with Margaret's photo on the wall of his office, and a culture that she would have recognized and respected. It is Sunday morning again. I am standing at the same stove, the same cast iron pan, the same bacon from the same butcher, the same kitchen with its chipped countertops and its cabinets I install myself. But Nathan is sitting at the table this morning with his coffee, and beside him is a woman named Rachel who makes him laugh with his whole face, and the sound of that laughter in this kitchen is something I will never take for granted. Emma, his girlfriend at the time, Rachel, sorry, this is still new, and I catch myself smiling at wrong moments. Ha ha ha, even now, even after everything. I look at Margaret's photograph on the mantel. We did it, love, I say, quietly. I spent 42 years building financial security. 42 years of careful work and deliberate saving, planning for a retirement that would carry me comfortably through whatever time I have left. And I gave all of it away in 9 days to save my son. Some people hear that and call it foolish. Starting over at 67 with almost nothing in the bank. But they are wrong about the nothing. I have my son, the real Nathan, not the one Victor was building, not the broken version, but the actual man underneath all of that, confident and purposeful, and finally in a room where his value is not defined by whoever holds the most power. I have justice, not revenge. There's a difference. Revenge would have been a fist through a plate glass window on day one. Justice was the patience to build something that could not be undone. I have Sunday mornings. I have the knowledge that 140 families still have employment because we did not walk away. I have the deadbolt on my own door. And through all of it, the thing I keep coming back to, the thing I would say to anyone listening who is standing at their own version of that moment where standing up looks like it will cost you everything, is this. Dignity does not get taken. It gets surrendered, and it can always be reclaimed. The cost of reclaiming it might be everything you have saved, everything you planned for, every comfortable assumption about how your future was supposed to look. But some things are worth more than a retirement account. And when you're sitting in your kitchen on a Sunday morning and the bacon is in the pan and the coffee is hot and your son is laughing with someone who sees him clearly, you will know without any doubt at all that you made the right call. I kissed Margaret's photograph and told her we had done well. Outside, Portland was waking up. People walking dogs. Cars moving. An ordinary Sunday in a city that had no idea what had happened in a boardroom not long ago. Inside, I sat with my coffee and my memories and the peace that comes from walking through fire without losing the thing that matters most, your integrity. Thank you for staying with me through this. Every single part of it. It means more than I can say. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not for the numbers, not for the algorithm, but for the person in your life whose name came to mind somewhere in the middle of this story. The one who needs to know that the people who underestimate you are almost always wrong, and that patience and evidence and love can do what rage never could. I am Edward Foster, and my son is home. The end.